Welcome back to the Kacha Outdoors podcast. We got a fun one for you today. Mr. Weston Paul from MTNTough Fitness. Appreciate you coming on, taking the time to chat with us. Looking forward to this. So Weston, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background into fitness. I don't want to give it away. I did a little bit of digging on my own, but I'd like to hear your perspective on like what you do, what your passions are in with fitness, and then how that affects hunting. So take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. No, appreciate it. Appreciate having me on. And I'd love to share with folks as part of my job. Definitely here at MTNTough, we're a fitness app and started in the backcountry hunting space. And have branched out from there. It's crazy just meeting people where they're at, and hunting, and as it's growing in popularity has helped us out certainly, but a lot of people just want to move. They want to move better, and then they want to have longevity in their lives. So we're grateful to be a part of that. For me, in my fitness journey, I'm 41 years old, and you remember like back to the presidential physical fitness test. Did you guys ever do that? Did you ever do that? Presidential?
No, I never did.
So I'm like, I don't know when it maybe stopped at some point. But
wait, was that the one where they had to do like the hanging bar walk? And who was the president that put that up?
I don't know. I should probably look and see. I should know what president started that. It was like Reagan or something like that.
That was,
but it was like
I think it was Nixon, actually.
Nixon? I'm like, you think I'm like, I have fond memories of the president's physical fitness test. For the most part, I could never pass the mile run. I had like allergies growing up really bad. And so I had asthma and inhalers and all that stuff. So I could never make it on the mile run. So I always got you got a red patch when you couldn't make it on one or two of the things. So my mom dug it up a while back, and she found my red patch, and it's like one of my most prized possessions is like
that's awesome,
that red patch. But I grew out of asthma in college and as a ski racer. And so fitness, obviously very important for racing downhill. And I just like didn't have to use my inhaler anymore. So it was probably just an age thing, or I finally grew out of it, which I was thankful. Also, I moved to Montana from South Dakota, and that might've had part of it to do with it too. But for me, fitness, like I always grew up being really active, couldn't run the mile, but it was just a big part in our household, like in my dad's family in particular. That fitness vein ran deep, and a bunch of cowboys, that sort of stuff. I was like, that's how I grew up. So I was always in shape. Although I couldn't run a mile, I could still sprint and do that stuff. And then I'd puff on the inhalers. But yeah, racing in college definitely gave me a good foundation. Is kind of cool too. In college, one of my fellow ski racers, she was from Sweden, and she started doing Pilates. And this was like early days of Pilates. So our whole ski team started doing a Pilates regiment with her, and it really transformed our ski team. And then also like the football team started doing it and complaining about it and all of that. But that functional piece is just a really, really strong portion for me. I love spending time in the mountains. So I want to be able to go up in the mountains, whether it was ski mountaineering or just backpacking, climbing, all of that stuff. So it was always just really active, staying, light and very, very fit, and then having that strength component from ski racing. So for me, flash forward a number of years and getting into my professional career, and then moving to Bozeman. I was in Billings and then moved to Bozeman. Just stayed with that same vein. And honestly, the endurance running piece for me started with hunting. Like as I, graduated from college and then moved to Bozeman, I had an opportunity to hunt, and, kind of did it growing up and all that sort of stuff too, but was able to go and hit the mountains. And I saw where that mountain style of hunting overlapped with my like ski mountaineering climbing life. And I'm like, this is my jam. Running had never really been a big thing for me, but I had seen, some of those trail runners out there that were also hunters, and they were also, skiers, mountaineers, those sort of folks. So I just naturally gravitated towards them. And And then the running like piece, my wife, some of her friends, they got into the Ragnar races and whatnot, and they just had a blast running together. So I had that sort of nudge from them, and I'm like out hunting, and one day one of my buddies goes, he's like, "You should enter the ridge run." 'Cause I just walk all day. Like, I'm, with a hunting pack on, I'm like, I'll walk all day. I love my curiosity. I always wanna see what's over probably to a fault, like, what's over the next hill. And my buddy goes, "You should enter the ridge run." He's like, "You'd be good at it." So I just would go and go, and so, he kinda saw that, and some of my wife's friends actually, like, encouraged me to sign up for a race, and I did, and I ran, 38K, like, off the couch, honestly. It was completely
Wow.
devastating, and I was just like, that was like a precursor to running the Ridge Run, which is like 20 miles or so. I'm like, "Oh, I can do it." I was encouraged to do this, so might as well try it out. And I did that 38K. It wrecked my world. Like, it was so devastating, but I was hooked, like, instantly. It was a really cool experience. I'd never run that far in my entire life. Like, I did one training run and did a 17-mile day, like, literally a couple, maybe a few weeks before the race, actually. And it was just cool to see that much country, to understand that my body could do this. And so I just went on an endurance running tangent, and I signed up for everything. I ran everything, and I continued to up the distance because that's one of the pieces in the endurance space. It's like, well, I did that distance. Now I can do this distance, and I can do this difficulty. So a lot of endurance runners like get sucked into that, and I'm definitely one of those. But yeah, I worked my way all the way up to running 100 milers, and it's just really cool what the body can do. But going back to like the influence of hunters, there's some people here in our local community that are really, really accomplished hunters, and they started running so they could go and scout areas faster. Like if they had a mountain goat tag or bighorn tag, or they wanted to go scout elk hunting areas, they would go do that on foot. And so that intrigued me, and running these distances in the races was helpful on the hunting vein. But every year when I go put my backpack on to go in the mountains to go and hunt, all that trail running, it didn't really it didn't necessarily translate into being able to move through the mountains with a load on your back,
I
which
was going to
was,
ask you about that. Yeah.
yeah, it's like interesting to me. I'm like, well, why am I sucking wind? Like, I am in the best shape of my life. I've run so far. I've run a ton of races. I can go 100 miles. I know that. 106 miles. I'm like, I know I can do that, but why am I struggling once I put a backpack on? And so that's the fascinating piece of fitness, or one of the fascinating pieces of fitness, is it's a puzzle. And so since I wanted to hunt, I needed to add a strength component into my running routine. And I was getting to the age where I started to break down a little bit on the strength side, because I was enjoying running so much. And the protocols that you would follow is time on your feet and distance and vert and all of that, but I didn't necessarily have a good strength program. And so that's about the time that I met Dustin, the founder of MTNTough. So Dustin Diefenderfer, I met him at a trail race, actually, and we became fast friends. And he one day said to me, he said, I'm gonna train backcountry hunters. I'm gonna quit my job. And he had a really good job at a software company. And he's like, I'm gonna train backcountry hunters. I'm like, that's crazy. Why would you quit your good job? Why don't you just do both? But that's not how he functions. He's all in when he wants to focus on something. And so he made that switch and said, "Can I train you?" I'm like, "Absolutely." Like, I need this, actually. I know I need this strength component because I'm starting to break down running, and I have these ailments, and I'm not recovering from these races as fast as I could. So strength was that one piece. And MTNTough and hunt in training backcountry hunters was able to be my strength substitute for running, but then also fill in where I had those gaps when I hit the mountains. And that was very, very evident, because I would go to these races, and the next day I'd be walking around just fine. While my friends are hobbling, I'm walking around And I'm like, I can go do this race again. Like I could go back the other direction today. And I was very confident in that, but that's because of the strength component and that style that Dustin just naturally has had and is built into Mountain Tough. So that's my long-winded answer to
I love it. I love it.
to fitness. Yeah.
Something you said I want to go back to. So you said you did that first race and it wrecked you.
Mm-hmm.
How did it wreck you?
I literally have never experienced anything like that before. And so I don't even remember what shoes I bought. I bought some trail running shoes. This is, gosh, I didn't even have to look back at like the date of that first race because it was pre-kids. And so this is probably like 15 years ago, I'll bet you. 14, 15 years ago. And so I bought whatever trail running shoes, and I wore my gym shorts that I had from college. This is funny. I actually wore boxers because boxers when I'm in the mountains, it was like I always wear like a pair of like good boxers because you just don't sweat as much. And yeah, it's just like good for backpacking. It's good for hunting. And so I decided that I'd run for 38K in those boxers. So I chafed like an astronomical amount. Like I'd never experienced, and no one told me about this. And people start trail running, and this is one of the first things I'm like, get Body Glide or Vaseline or something because you will. It's a shock to your body with friction. And so people have it too, like their nipples, like that sort of stuff. I'm like, I had all of the chafing and all the spots, my armpits, everything. My body, like my upper body broke out in all these little blisters after I finished. They're like little tiny blisters because it just is a complete shock. And my IT band on my right side was like completely flared up to where I really hobbled after that race and learned then about some stretches and some stuff that I needed to do to work on those IT bands. So I just went like full force. I'm like, yeah, I can do it. And mentally, yes. And that's why I was hooked on it because I'm like, I want to figure this out now. So
yeah, that's like, hey, I want to learn to swim. Where's your tallest high dive?
Yeah, like I'm gonna go for it. Like swimming actually scares me, but like I'll do that.
That's awesome.
Traveling distance with with support from aid stations and that sort of stuff, and the really positive community that is trail running. And the ultra space is like unmatched. Like there's a serious dose of positivity that you get, and that you don't get that a lot of places in society right now. So the trail running community is a place that you can get that. Yeah.
Something else you said that really resonated was you're talking about adding that strength component. So many people with fitness, they get stuck into a one-dimensional approach.
Yeah.
And I did it. I grew up, I've lifted weights for a long time. It's just something I really enjoy. And so, but you get stuck in that one-dimensional approach to fitness and you think, I'm good with this one dimension that I do. So with weight training, obviously weight training translates less to mountain fitness than endurance running does, but having that well-rounded approach where you have your cardiovascular endurance, your muscular endurance, your strength, building all those components equally, that's just so key in the backcountry, specifically with hunting, because it's such a grueling thing. Backcountry hunting, it's a beast. It really is.
Yeah, it is. And that for me, well, I'm like, I can watch a bull roll over. He can go over the next ridge somewhere out there. And I'm like, I can dang sure go after him. Like, I know that, but I wouldn't get there as fast as I want. Like if I'm on foot without weight on my back, I can get there like in not a very long period of time. Like I can travel to that spot, but putting that extra, even 20, 30 pounds on my back, say even 15 pounds on my back, like that in the early days for me was very, very evident. And it would take me a little while to climb enough of those ridge lines and get up in the mountains with that weight on my back to acclimatize or train so that by the time I hit rifle season, I'm like, I'm good now. I'm good to go. But archery would devastate me. And Dustin found a lot the same, because he ran a whole bunch, and he walked into the woods then and had the same sort of experience, and that's what made him head down the path of like, let's do this hybrid approach. Let's add strength and let's add endurance, and let's carry load more often so that we are prepared for that hunt when it rolls around. Because while I wanted to do good at races, like my ulterior motive was to go into hunting season and, pack an elk out. That's what I really wanted to do. I mean, I love the races and all that, but I was more about seeing how this would pay off in the mountains. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Thinking about that strength component, let's just say you've got somebody who's maybe 20, 30 pounds overweight. They're generally active. Maybe they have an active job. Maybe they work construction or something. They hit the gym a few times a week. They'll run here and there, but they know I've got a lot of work to do to get ready for season. And they're not the endurance runner. They're not they're not a Dustin. They don't have that background in intense fitness. What would you tell somebody first starting out, like what to do, where to start with it?
Yeah. Yeah. For us, like it's so important to meet people where they're at, because you can't just fast forward into this sort of level. And maybe it's aspirational. Maybe you don't actually care to get to that level too. So like meeting people where they're at, for us, we start with body weight. Honestly, like it's so good to have mobility and utilize your body weight. You don't need anything. Like all you need is a space to be able to move around on. So for us, that body weight piece is really important. Let's get you moving. We have in our on-ramp series like a heavy dose of mobility built into that. And then you're doing simple movements. We're just getting you moving again, and we're creating a habit. So by you moving and starting a workout one day, say it's a Monday, and then saying, I'm going to do a rest day and I'm going to start another workout on Wednesday and then Friday. And you do that for a couple weeks, if not a few weeks, you're creating that habit. And everyone is capable of that. They maybe have just fallen out of it, but that simple movement with just your body weight is such a great place. And people are sometimes they might doubt that they can stick to the plan, or they might say, well, that like I need to do a little bit more. And the answer is you don't need to do a little bit more. Just do a little bit right now, and you can get started and you can get back into that routine. So many, like say for us guys in particular, maybe we had a strength program in high school. Maybe we did one in college, and like we like to get back there. Like it was enjoyable for us to go and do that strength piece. So by starting with that mobility and your body weight, then you can move into maybe a strength routine. And for Mountain Tough, we'll blend some of those components, but we'll actually give you a plan to follow so that we are looking towards that end goal of getting in the mountains and feeling good in the mountains. So just simple movement, mobility. We're big on PT as well, because everybody has those underlying ailments. So if we can help you out with those, and we can get you feeling good so that you do wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm going to go do this workout. And that habit creation is really, really helpful too. So starting small and being okay with it. Like there's all kinds of stuff out there. And even for us at Mountain Tough, we know, like we know that not everybody is going to look this way, but I'll tell you what, looks don't matter. Like what's up here in your mind, that's what matters ultimately. And so for us, just having a variety of programs for people to start, get on a plan, and then they can move into the other programs as they gain that confidence again. So,
so something I noticed is that there's a bunch of different groups around fitness in the hunting industry. Some guys, my dad, my granddad, whoever, they were the stuff, and none of them were in any fitness program. Just the good old days, right? And I think there's kind of like it's basically if you have the desire to do backcountry hunting, or if hunt elk and you plan on dragging it off of a mountain, it's probably a good idea to invest in your body a little bit, because it's a serious deal to do something like that. And even furthermore, I think that that people, there's disconnect, I think. So we're not like the greatest hunters in the world. We do have success every year. Really tough region, tough area to hunt in. California can be very difficult even to find animals. And our whole thing is if we go further than the other guys do, if we push harder than the other guys do, we're gonna get those results. And I think that's something that lends itself really well to what you guys are doing. Is that even if Cam Hanes or somebody, you have a little bit of an edge on the general populace or the terrain or where you were before. That allows you to get into those little bit deeper spots and have more included hunts and more, it was bad. Your body, we went on a hunt to Colorado and it was our first time. I've hiked in high altitude before, but it's like you were talking about previously, with it, like campback is a totally different beast. And we were camped at like 12,000 feet, and bodies were the limiting factor on our hunt. Nothing else. Like we knew where the elk were, we knew how to get there, we kill them, but our bodies were what limited us success on that hunt. We weren't prepared for the altitude. So I think it's one of those things that people don't really think about until they're put in the situation. And then it's like maybe you're running experience, your genesis there was like fun. Oh, this is a long ways to go. Like I got to figure this out.
That's exactly like my experience, and that's the experience for so many people. So to translate, say a trail run, let's say you sign up for a Spartan race, or you sign up for a trail race, or you do a High Rocks event or something. Yeah, you'll put some training in because it's a fitness event. But hunting, you're right. Like you have to invest in your body. You are your best investment. If you invest in your body, you will find the success. And you can forego getting the piece of gear that you think might help you because you've invested in your body.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about hunting is that oftentimes it takes us going and experiencing that to come back and recognize, hey, I'd like to do that differently. And like the self-talk that you have when you're out there and you are defeated and maybe you come home or that didn't go how you expected it. Like a guy can really beat themselves up about that. And then you'll wait a whole nother year and maybe you might draw again and maybe you might get to go, but it's this really slippery slope where you can forego that by getting the confidence early and preparing for, say, elevation, because you've done this fitness component. You've done 40-minute workouts for a whole year, say 5 days a week or 4 days a week. You've done these 40-minute workouts for a whole year and you prepared yourself mentally, and you go into that hunt and you say like, I got this. And you step in there with that confidence, and your success rate will go up because you are able to push a little bit further than the other people. But ultimately it's your mind. Like you're confident that you've done what you needed to do, and you can shoot your bow and you can practice on your elk calls and you can do all that stuff in the same, but fitness is you can't just pick it up and expect to see the results. So it takes a level of commitment that, I love hunters for their level of commitment. And when they combine that level of commitment in the fitness realm, like sky's the limit for them. It's really cool.
I love what you said about gear, because man, that's so true. Like you think I can go farther. I can go down this canyon if only my hip belts just sat a little bit better on my hips, or I had these different soles on my boots or whatever. But no, your fitness is such it's the biggest component of all that. Yeah, that's so true. I've fallen into that trap so many times.
Me too. I'm like, and then I'm just like, oh, I like back when I was recognizing I was lacking in the strength piece, I would lighten up my backpack more and more. I would leave the things like back at camp that I was like I was just shedding weight all the time, and then the more bloodthirsty I'd get, I'd literally like put my little water filter in my one pant pocket, like the cargo pocket, and some snacks in the other. And I'm like, I gotta move. Like I need to move to where these elk are, and my backpack's slowing me down. So I would just shed everything, which isn't the smartest way to go about backcountry hunting either, because you don't have the kit with you that you may need in case of, say, an emergency. So I was
Mhm.
like, no, I need to add more strength in so I can carry my kit. Like I can't leave it back there. But I would just go bloodthirsty. It's like I'm going light. I'm like even down to boots. I bring my trail running shoes in, and I'd have them because
Mhm.
I'm like I gotta go. So I would do that. I would travel in that running space, and then I recognized I was like, no, no, no. I need to be trained so that I can carry my backpack wherever I'm going to go. I've got my full kit, my space blanket. If I need to spend a night on this ridge line, I can do that.
Yeah.
And those are really important things as a hunter that yeah, you shouldn't do what I what I did is what I'm saying.
So I got another question for you.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk about how specific things that you've done personally, how it translates to specific things on the mountain? And what I mean by that is like, okay, how does if I take up running and I get really good at running, I'm gonna build up my endurance. How is running specifically going to help me? And then talk about maybe your strength training, what that does on the mountain. And
Yep.
then something else you mentioned earlier, I wanted to circle back around to was functional fitness
Mhm.
and a functional training routine. And how does that translate? What does it specifically help you with? If you don't mind breaking that down.
Yeah. Yeah. Movement in the mountains has always been really important to me, and I think that's why I love trail running, because I every summer I try to go and do like an adventure loop somewhere in a mountain range that I've looked at for a long time or just been curious about. So my curiosity and being able to move has always been a driving force for me. So trail running lends itself well to that discipline, the strength component, and wanting to be durable in the mountains and be able to sustain load for a long period of time. That does translate over into the trail running space, that durability piece, but more so in the hunting space to where I'm just not beat up. And
Mhm.
I want to be able to continue to move, but I don't want to wake up the next morning and be like, I'm so stiff and sore, my knees hurt, like all of that, to where I will forego an opportunity because my body's not in the shape that it should be. So that's that. Then the strength component. And then for a functional piece, like I it's crazy to me, and I've said this a few times to people, but if you're I don't know if do you guys have kids?
Yes.
Okay. Your kids ever like, come jump on the trampoline with me? Do you have a trampoline?
Yes.
They're like, come jump on a trampoline with me. And they're just beg you to come jump on the trampoline. And the best thing you can do as a parent is just drop everything you're doing and go jump on the trampoline with them.
Hmm.
But when your back hurts or your knee hurts, you have that little moment where you're like, I should go jump on the trampoline with my kids, but my back hurts right now. And sometimes I'll speak for myself. I won't go jump on the trampoline because my back hurts. And I need to do something about that. And I have the tools to go and do that something. So it's yoga, it's the stretching routine, the PT, those sort of pieces um, are are that functional piece in my mind of being able to move to where when your kids say that, you go out there and you do a backflip on the trampoline as soon as your kids, and because your back doesn't hurt. And
Hmm.
there are plenty of people out there that are getting up there in their years. And I always ask people, in the trail running space or the skiing community or the hunting space as well, like, what's one of your keys? And that mobility, yoga. I know
Hmm.
guys sometimes don't like to hear yoga, but I'm like, that stuff is what pays off. And I think that's a big component. I know that's a big component even for me, because I've been there where I'm like, my back hurts. I don't want to go do a backflip. Well, I'm going to figure that out. So back to the trampoline thing. If you wake up in the morning and you get out of bed and if you're, 40, 50, 60, 80 years old and you can move, I was like, then you've hit the jackpot in terms of like doing the right things. And that mobility piece. I rode the chairlift here at Bridger Bowl with a guy. He's 85 years old. His name's Dick Dorworth. He holds a world downhill speed skiing record. Actually, I looked him up. He was a fascinating guy, and I was like, I need to connect with him again. But I asked him that because anytime I get into that situation with somebody who's old, who has that wisdom, and I'm like, what's the key? And he's like, I've always had the endurance. I've always had the strength. Like those are just two things that are built in. Like, but he was like, the mobility piece is the big one. He's like, I do an hour, 3 days a week of yoga. And he said, I did it on a challenge. A guy told him that he'd never be able to hold the lotus pose, I think is what he said. And he said, it took me well over a year to get to the point where I could hold that pose. And he said, I'm 85 and I'm skiing. He's like, he pointed at the ridge. He's like, I don't hike up to the ridge anymore. But he skis all the time and he rips too. And so I'm just like, man, that sort of stuff is a big deal. So for us, as we continue into this, we all want to do this for a long time. Like it's a blessing to be here. It's a blessing to get to go do what we get to do. We have these wonderful wild spaces that we can go and we can participate in whatever recreational activity, and hunting is just like, I want to do that until I'm old. So hopefully, God keeps me on the earth for, a while. But I want to be able to do this until I'm quite old too. So that's a big one. And tying all three of those together, I think is a big component of it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I only have like 4 points in Utah, and it takes 30 to get a good hunt now these days. So, yeah, I better get some stretching in. Yeah, we had a podcast with Quentin Dial. He was an NFL defensive lineman. Really cool guy. So he was talking about how he's had both knees reconstructed, and he still gets out there and hoofs the mountains, man. It's crazy. And so I asked him, like, how do you stay functional? What's your keys to doing this with the knee issues he's had and stuff? He said, man, stretching. He said, if I'm going to start hiking at 6, I'm going to get up at 4 and I'm going to stretch. I'm like, whoa, that's commitment. But hey, that's what it takes. That's what it takes. So,
yeah, I did. We were just in South Dakota is where I grew up. And so there's a rodeo clinic, a roping clinic that my oldest boy went to, and it's with the people that I grew up with, and they put on these clinics all growing up. And so I went to these clinics, and they were always big on the fitness portion. And I remember Paul Tierney is his name. He was always training specifically, and he was a world champion multiple time, and just like one of the best. And I hadn't seen him for a little while, so we were back at this clinic, and he's 73 now. And I asked him, I said, what's your fitness routine these days? And he's like, I get up and I stretch every single morning. And the dude does not look like he's 73. He might look late 50s, honestly. And he's had the strength component too. And he's had the endurance component, depending on what events he was competing in. He would dial it up on the running. But I'm like, that's a big deal for somebody who is still that active and can do what he does at 73. And that's the same as that hunter that's out there. Like one of my good friends, and he's a college professor. I met him in college, actually, geology professor, but he is just a very, very accomplished bow hunter that nobody knows about. His name is Tom. He's put up big routes all over the world, like climbing routes. And so he's a mountaineer of mountaineers, and he's got a fake hip, and he's so active. And that, yes, the stretching, but he's out there. Like he just loves being out there, and he'll be out there for a long time. So seeing those individuals is like a big driving force for me, because I'm like, well, if you can do it, I can do it. can I get some information from you so that then I can work on this journey and be a little bit further ahead, because everybody, so we look at them, they've put these programs together. It's the same with me in running, say, like it took years to put that program together. And now we're so fortunate in the way this world works. We can connect with each other. We can learn so much just by Googling it, honestly. Like there's a lot of information out there. But it is nice to hear from people who have those life experiences as well, because then an individual can say like, well, I heard that from them, so I want to forego maybe trying to figure this out myself. Like maybe I'll just follow that protocol and see where that gets me. And I think that fast forwards individuals into like a more successful scenario, honestly, when they take all that information, find what they like, and they don't have to just learn by doing immediately. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of ties back into what you were saying earlier about somebody just starting out, like just start doing something.
Yeah.
And the key kind of undercurrent with all the people you're talking about and yourself, it's just the consistency of movement, right? And start somewhere and keep going. Just keep going. And we've had countless people hit us up, new hunters here in California, asking us, hey, how do I find deer? How do I identify tracks? How do I just all the basic hunter questions, right? But if you can master your own body first, then how much easier is it to find those deer when you can go down in that deep canyon, when you can get to that next ridge? Ben and I, we call it ridgeitis because it's like an ailment, you know. You got to get to that next ridge. It's ridgeitis. You'll stomp on $10 to get there, but you're gonna get
there. There's like gosh, a person would have to look it up. There's a podcast with Corey Jacobson and Brian Call. It might be like one of the very first Gritty Bowman podcasts that's out there. Like very, very first. And it goes through all the personality types of hunters. And then it's so spot on. They should redo it. Actually,
That's great.
I should get a hold of those guys and be like, you guys need to redo this. You need to bring it back because it's so relevant. And I'm one of those. I will go with you guys and we would just be so far from everything. And all the elk would be like 3 ridge lines back. Like, you know, that's the way it works too. But yeah. Like the physical element, like that's all a portion of it. And there's all those puzzle pieces when it comes to the physical element. But the mental side for a backcountry hunter, like it's so crucial of being able to just withstand, whether it's the elements or it's defeat, being able to handle success too, because if you're successful on your first year, say backcountry archery elk hunting, you're going to go a number of years without being successful again. So like your time is coming, and how you deal with all of that is that mental side. And we've just known that too from our spheres, and that mental toughness is something that at Mountain Tough we love to preach and we love to coach on, so that people can start preparing themselves for what they're going to experience as well. I don't want to overshadow or like just focus on fitness, but the nutritional element as well is so crucial. I like my brother-in-law, we've hunted together for forever. And there was a time in my brother-in-law's life where he was really overweight and he was just a pain to hunt with. He wouldn't get up in the morning and he's just so fun to hunt with, like during the day. But when he was overweight, he was just like, you had to drag him out of bed, and just took him a while, but he really made a life change, and he went on a keto diet and he committed to it, and he changed his life. And following that diet plan worked for him. And I remember hunting with him like that year after he had done keto, and he was like in front of me just going up hills. And I'm like, there's something to that. You know, I watched like his energy levels, and like he had made such a life transformation through diet that it reinvigorated hunting for him. And it was so cool to see. I mean, and I was just curious. I'm like, man, I can't believe keto. Like I always heard, like you run out of energy and da 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 da. And I'm like, you're not running out of energy at all. And we hunted hard, and I'm like, that sort of stuff, once people commit to that and they create that habit, like
Hmm.
you're not going to pry it from their cold dead fingers. Like they're going to hold on to it, and they're going to utilize that, whatever tool, whether it's diet or it's fitness or it's the mental side, like you're not going to want to go without it once you experience it at that level. So
Yeah, you talked a lot there about mental toughness. That's actually what Dustin and Remy Warren
mhm.
and Randy Newberg were talking about at the sheep show when we went, and the whole discussion was centered around mental toughness. And sometimes I think people look at it as a kind of an ambiguous thing. Like, what is mental toughness? What does that mean? Well, it's really simple. It's just doing hard things until they're easy. Like
Yeah.
that's what it is, right? And so initially, mental toughness can be just starting that keto diet day one, getting through the first week, the first month, losing that first 5-10 pounds.
Mhm.
It could be starting that fitness routine, and then eventually it'll keep progressing. It's not static, so eventually it'll keep progressing to where you're overcoming that next canyon, that next ridge. And
Yeah.
so that mental toughness component is so key, so key.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, even in the hunts that you go and experience, like you go through like periods of fatigue or bonking. If a person has never experienced a bonk before, where your body just runs out of energy and you have to sit down and you're lightheaded and you're like, I don't think I can go anywhere. Like that's a real deal. And for you to experience that and then draw on it and say, like, I went through that before, but I came out of it, and I was able to continue to move and get out of the mountains, say, or I was able to have a successful hunt. Those sort of hardships too, like they'll teach you a bunch on the hunt, but there's ways that you can practice those in a day in and day out fashion, that you're prepping yourself for that hunt. So you're going into it more prepared because you've done these. And yes, ice baths and saunas and all that stuff, it's pretty trendy and all that stuff right now. But just sticking to a plan. I was like, you don't have to go buy them, ice
Yeah.
barrel. I'm like, you
That's
you
the
can,
rage now.
yeah, I'm like, you can if you want to, and you can do that, and you can make yourself go through it. Like, believe me, I'm like, I hate cold water, and I'm like, I know I can get in cold water. I know I
Mhm.
can, and that's a good thing, to know about yourself and apply in other areas. But the big thing is like those challenges that you experience and that mental toughness, that resilience that you build, that'll pay off in other places in life, like more so than in hunting. Like it'll pay off when you go through a hardship and something happens in your work life, you lose your job, let's say. Like those sort of things are what you draw on. Like that was a
Mhm.
hard hunt, or that this has been a difficult it's been difficult to cold plunge. And I was like, you can handle a cold plunge, but how can you handle you know a car crash
Yeah,
or a debilitating injury or something like that? So like it's more for life than it is for these recreational pursuits.
it
That's
is.
certain. Yeah.
It's true. When our first hunt we did, Ben and I, backcountry hunt. So I grew up hunting, but it was like road hunt style. My dad wasn't a backcountry hunter at all. Our first hunt we did, I was I don't know, 4 or 5 months removed from my second ACL reconstruction. So
Yeah.
I had the fitness level of like, an overfed cat. So yeah, it was pathetic. And so I was huffing and puffing, and it was like that for the first few hunts. And so for me, it's kind of a personal transparency here, but like for me, it was the mental toughness component that came first, well before any sort of physical fitness. It was just like, okay, I got to get to the top of this hill because I know Ben can't carry me out of here. So it's either I get to the top of that hill or I die trying. So yeah, it's that mental component, man. It'll drive you. It really will.
Yeah. And it's a big deal, and be proud of that too, to have that mental component, because everybody's got it. It
Mhm.
may be suppressed somewhere, or maybe you haven't been able to tap into that as much, but I argue that everybody's got it. They've got that ability within them. It's just what brings that about, what makes you, what motivates you to want to tap into it and train that. Yeah.
Yeah, in our modern life, we don't get the very many opportunities to really like bring up that primal. I don't know what to call it, like just that primal drive, right? Like,
Totally.
yeah, when you're in your morning commute with your cup of coffee to the office, like it's not primal. So,
No,
the mountains are what give us that opportunity, really, to dive deep. Yeah. So I love it.
Yeah. You get into that scenario, and there's so much to gain. And it wasn't that many years ago where that was more of a norm for individuals. 150 years ago, there was a lot more time spent in nature, and there was a lot more ability to provide for yourself and your family via nature as well. And like in a short amount of time, we become really reliant on other things. And I say in the fitness space, since I've known Dustin and since MTNTough and like the style of training, I'm like, it's manufactured hardship. Like we're just manufacturing it because
it is true.
We do in this day and age. I'm like, that's why gym equipment exists. It's like we need to like challenge ourselves. So let's manufacture it. Let's make it up and let's go do it. But then let's go utilize it out there as well. Yeah.
Well, wanted to ask you too. So we'll wrap this up pretty soon, but appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, you
have any California hunting experience?
No, I don't actually. I'm like, I love getting to hunt Southwest Montana, and so I put in for a couple other states, but I just love getting to do what I do here. So I haven't hunted California, but we took a trip to San Diego over like after the new year, my family and I, and my oldest boy and I, we dropped the rental car off and we went like downtown San Diego. I was like, let's go just like, I don't know. It was later, and my wife and younger boy were like, they were all good to go, like wrapped up for the day and wanted to like wind down and read in a hotel and before we flew out the next day. So my son and I, my oldest boy and I, we went and we just checked out downtown San Diego. I was like, oh, it's a little like, it's out of my element too. Like, and it's not super sketchy, right? You guys know, but you're still going to see some stuff. Like you're still going to see some stuff. So we went and cruised, we walked and just saw the sights and listened to the people and got yelled at and all that sort of stuff, but didn't get shot at or anything like that in San Diego. But it was cool to do that, take us out of our element, because we're used to going to the mountains and we spend a lot of time with grizzly bears and you name it, wolves and whatever, dangerous stuff, right? So we're in the city and we get just an Uber ride back to the hotel then after we dropped the rental car off and did our stuff, and we got an Uber ride back, and the guy, it was a Tesla too, so it was like my son, he'd never been in a Tesla and sheltered Montana life, and guy asked, where are you from, and we're like, Montana, and he's like, can you guys hunt out there? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh man. And it opened up this door. This guy was like, the last guy you'd think would know anything about hunting was just like, oh, I want to hunt so bad. I want to like harvest my own meat and that's what I would like. And he was in California. And I was like, oh man. And he was explaining that it's a little more difficult in California to hunt as a resident than, so I wasn't able to help him or give him any advice for California, but you guys could probably give a guy like that. But I was so taken back that this guy driving a Tesla was just like, that is so cool. Like, what's your favorite game animal to eat? And da. And he's like, I'd love to have elk in my freezer. I'm just like, this is cool. This is really cool. So
a lot of California hunters are like a walking paradox, because you get this like, the quote unquote city slicker life, but they moonlight as a hunter. So it's cool to see.
I love it. I'm like, that's a heart of hunting. Like, honestly, like, well, you can quote me on this too, because Montanans are just notorious for saying stuff about Californians. And I'm like, listen,
bring it.
if you're saying stuff about Californians, I was like, guess what? Like, you're you were probably from California, or your great granddad or your great granddad is from California. So don't say anything bad about Californians because I don't want to hear it. And that I stand by that too. I always correct people when they're like, ding, whatever. I'm like, yes, I'm Montana, but I'm a transplant too. And we're all transplant when it comes down to it. Because everybody hit that West Coast. Like, look at just the migration of people and like how the West was settled. Everybody hit that West Coast. And you read back to Lewis and Clark and just, I'm like that West Coast and the elk that they, existed on over those winters and that sort of stuff. I'm like, that's a real deal. You guys got gnarly mountains, biggest mountains around. You got a lot of good. I know that people will say whatever, this and that, but I'm like, I would love to come hunt California. I have a hard time leaving here. So
I can't say I blame you for that. Yeah, California is a hidden gem if you know where to go and what to look for. We have probably, I would say, the highest population of black bears in the lower 48. Like, we have so many black bears, and bear hunting is not a big thing in California as much as it is in other states. And so we have an annual quota of 1,700 bears, and we never reach it.
Wow.
Never reach it. And oftentimes Ben and I will be out hunting and we'll see more bears than we do deer. It's that crazy.
Dang.
So there's a lot of bear hunting opportunities here. So,
yeah. And you should go hunt them. That's I mean, one, it's an awesome experience. Two, it's necessary to control the populations. And I don't mind bear meat. It gets a bad rap too, but I'm like, it's just unique. That's all. I'm like, that's it. So
we've learned to just grind it all. If you grind it, turn it into sausage, Italian sausage, breakfast sausage. It's the best. Yeah.
Like Thanksgiving stuffing is bear. And everyone's
Perfect.
like, so good. And I'm like, it is good, actually. Like, it's really good. Breakfast patties and let alone the fat and everything that you can do with that rendered down. Like, it's really awesome. So I mean, yeah, to each their own, certainly. But that's fascinating, though, that you have that many bears in the quota and it's never met. Yeah.
The last population estimate was like 30,000 bears.
Wow.
And I know it's way higher than that. That was years ago. And like I said, we never hit that quota. It's usually 12, 13, 1,400 bears.
Yep.
And so it's just, the population is growing exponentially.
Wow.
But anyways, so put that on your calendar at some point.
Yeah.
Come out here and do some bear hunting. And we have a long season too. So
how long is the season?
It opens concurrently with archery season in August, which is usually the third Saturday of August. And then you have the 4-week archery season. And then third Saturday in September, rifle season starts in most places. And then it runs until the end of December, bear season.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you get, 3-4 months of hunting if you want to.
Yeah. There's really no reason why. Yeah. I'm like, well, you wouldn't as a hunter.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
A lot of opportunities.
Yeah. That's cool.
So before we wrap this up, what's next for Weston Paul? What's your next big challenge, your next big thing? Any big hunts coming up or physical fitness challenges? What do you have?
Yeah. It's funny. Like, we'll do on a whim, we'll do stupid stuff. We're going to go in a couple weeks. Me and a crew from here, and then Eric McCormick, and lives in Phoenix. And he's got a crew as well. We're going to do rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon.
Ooh, I've heard about that. That's gnarly.
Yeah. I was like, I've only ever flown over the Grand Canyon. I've never seen it in person. So yeah, we're going to go do that. We're going to go in, we're going to fly to Phoenix, drive. We're going to start running. We're going to finish it. And then we're going to fly back like a mission. So yeah, that'll be like the next stupid thing, but I'm so excited. It's going to be a really good crew and it'll be fun. We've got, a couple guys too that are newer to MTNTough that they're like, we'll go. And I'm like, sweet. So it'll be the furthest they've ever run. And granted, we'll pitter patter the downhill and then hike the uphill. So don't think it's all running, certainly. But
what are the specs on that?
Oh gosh, I'm terrible about that stuff. I'm like the guy that's like, let's go do it. I don't really
What
care
does it
about
matter?
that. It ends up being, I think, 20,000 of vert climbed and 20,000 descent and like 42 or maybe 48 miles, something like that. Yeah.
So
So
48 miles, 40,000 feet of elevation change.
yeah, elevation change. Yeah. I
And
always go with
that's
like the gain, 20,000 of gain, not 40,000 of gain. 40,000 would be a whole nother world. But yeah, I think it's somewhere around there. So,
and it's 24 hours, right?
well, like the goal that we have is to do it in 16 hours. So,
Good.
yeah.
That's crazy.
So we'll see. I mean, it all depends on how hot it ends up getting. I think there was a group that, yeah, I got a text from a buddy that was down there. It was like 72 or so was a high for them. So, and we're coming out of winter, so we're like not used to, I mean, we sweat, but we don't sweat in that sort of heat.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like the next big one. And then we'll go into summer adventures and, yeah, just mountain activities. So yeah,
Cool.
there's a race called the Crazy Mountain 100. It's a 100-mile race here in Montana, and it's the only 100-mile race that Montana has, just because of Montana is just a difficult place to just run a race through, actually. So whether it's like private landowners, wilderness, Forest Service, but that one goes on at the end of July. So we do a big aid station, and yeah, MTNTough sponsors it. But Crazy Mountain 100, it's really cool. If there's anyone that is looking to do a 100-mile race, I would highly recommend looking into that one. It's like one of the raddest mountain ranges on the face of the planet. It's rugged, it's gnarly. And we do a big aid station and help people make it to their next destination in that run, which is really fun. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, good luck.
Cool.
Especially with that rim to rim to rim.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
crazy.
I'm like, we'll see. And then the draw stuff will come out and we'll start figuring out. I'm like, who knows between all of us here at MTNTough, like what someone will draw, because that'll always change the game and change the tone. And hopefully we can tell some stories out of this hunting season as well. So that's big for us. But yeah, what do you guys got going?
Well, we have our local hunts, of course. We're actually we're running a contest right now, a sweepstakes. We're going to take one of our subscribers bear hunting with us this year.
Dude.
So, yeah, so that's pretty cool. We just launched it this week, actually. What's today? Tuesday, yesterday. Yeah,
sweet.
So we're running that until May. It closes in May 19th, awesome. I think is the date. So
awesome.
Yeah, we're excited to see what kind of feedback we get. We talked about it on our podcast like a year ago and got a lot of feedback like, hey, do it. We want to go. So yeah, let's do it. So first time we've done something like this. But yeah, we have that. I think I'll be chasing elk in Oregon this year.
Oh, nice.
So my cousin was a ranch hand there for most of his life.
Oh my God.
He's going to point me in the right direction. Yeah.
I love it. I
have a connection.
Yeah, I was looking at Oregon because I think there's a chance we might be able to do something in Oregon too. So I was like, maybe I should won't give away all that. Elk hunting is so funny, or hunting in general is funny like that. So I go back and forth. I'm like, oh, sometimes it's hush hush, but I'm always like, not that I'll just give spots away or anything like that, because it does change it. But if people genuinely want to go do it, I would love to help them on that journey. So whether it's fitness or like, hey, here's a pin or here's a unit. So Oregon kind of piqued my interest a little bit too. So yeah, that's cool.
It'll be my first, the maiden voyage for Oregon for me. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good elk hunting. I'm like, that would be on my list too, to do some of that thick, nasty, like Roosevelt stuff too.
The coastal.
Yeah. Like
coastal
that's just,
elk,
man, that's another world. It's another world. So yeah. Cool.
But yeah, it's a lot of good stuff. Well, hey man, thanks so much for taking the time. Let's stay in touch, and good luck with it, for everything you have coming up. Good luck in the draws. We have some apps out too, so I know how that feels.
You bet. Well, yeah, we'll chat again for sure. I appreciate you guys having me on and getting to share about MTNTough. But yeah, just want to encourage people to get out there and just utilize this life. It's a blessing. So like, let's do our best to utilize it well. So, all right.
Totally agree. Well, thanks again, and We'll look forward to the next one.